So join me today on episode 31st of Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast. I have with us a very special guest, and I'm super excited to be doing this with you guys. I think this is my first podcast with a duo. So, so see how it goes. But this is JT Kelly and his wife, Jennifer. And thank you. He was a very special patient to me not long ago. And unfortunately, they live in Daytona. So I don't get the pleasure to spend week a week time with them. But thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. We're glad to be here.
Okay, so JT and Kelly, they live in South Daytona, Florida, and they're proud parents of two sons, Thomas, 26, and Declan, 22. JT grew up in Daytona Beach area and served in the U.S. Navy as a young man, long time ago, right, young man? Before, saying long time ago. Before retiring in January 2022, he worked for Sea Ray Boats and for the city of South Daytona Parks and Recreation. He loved disc golf, camping, the Baltimore Orioles, discovering new craft beers, live music, and smoking great barbecue. After losing his voice unexpectedly in November 2022 and two subsequent biopsies, JT was diagnosed with a stage 3 laryngeal cancer in March 2023. He underwent a total laryngectomy in May and 6 weeks of radiation therapy in June and July. And he received his care here at UF Health in Gainesville, Florida. So again, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you.
So I just want to clarify with everyone. So since he had a total laryngectomy, so he lost his voice. So he has, it's an electrolarynx. Did I say right? Which is the vibration you put on your voice box. And that's really hard on a podcast to try to understand. So they have an app that is a speech assist type of app. And that's what you're going to hear with some of his questions. So just want to clarify that. So JT, tell me about your journey. How did you notice? What happened? How did you notice? What made you go to the physician? What happened?
I lost my voice at the end of October, out of the blue. We thought it was laryngitis, but we started to worry when it wasn't coming back after several weeks.
Got you. So what was the next step? What did you guys do?
I went to 3 different doctors for scopes and biopsies. That first biopsy came back benign, but the doctor didn't trust the sample size to give an accurate result, so she referred us to the UF Health ENT specialist. He did another scope and biopsy and diagnosed stage 3 laryngeal cancer.
And this is the first time that you ever lost your voice? Did you never have any situation like that before?
No. And we at first just thought maybe it was just, laryngitis or stress or allergies, like you chalk it up to a million things. But he actually has a really dear friend who is also a throat cancer survivor, a different type of throat cancer, but they were the ones that said, you have to go get this checked out. And so we did.
I'm so glad you did. So tell me what happened after that. So you got here in the system, and then what happened?
I had a total laryngectomy on May 4th, where they removed my voice box and reconstructed my throat and my airway using a tissue graft from my left forearm. I also had 6 weeks of radiation this summer. Lots of therapies, too, speech, occupational, and physical therapy.
So I'm always amazed how the surgeons just build stuff, right? They take all these big which is super important. And all of a sudden, 10 hours later, because usually it's a pretty long surgery, you wake up and then here you can breathe through it. You can do all those things. Yeah, no voice, but it is amazing. Just really amazed me. And I think I saw you, unfortunately, I didn't get to see you prior to radiation. Usually we love to see our head and neck patients to be here at least 2 weeks after surgery so we can address all these dysfunctions that happen and try to get things down and with much better motion and decreased swelling prior to radiation, because we know radiation is going to increase some of that issues more. So when I saw you, I think you were about to start radiation, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we that is an important thing to look back on too, because after surgery, because we live 2 hours away from Gainesville, we were released with home health, which was great for nursing, but they also had physical therapy and occupational therapy through home health. And they came to the house and really, they didn't have any idea. In hindsight, I wish we had just been able to set up directly with you right after surgery, because the physical therapy in the home, really, they were just looking at mobility in the home. They didn't understand the procedure that he had and what was happening as a result of that. So there was a delay. And I think you were amazing whenever we got you, whatever point that was. But had it been earlier, it would have been really great.
Yeah, and you're right. And you brought a really good point, which I totally see. It's a major surgery, right? So you really go home, and many times, the physicians, look into like, well, really, it's going to be really hard for them to go into outpatient. We're going to do home health because, everything that goes on. And you just mentioned something super important is the nursing part, right? So the
Right.
nursing, because the wound care and the dressings and how to take care of the laryngectomy and the whole 9 yards is super important. But you
Right.
right. Unfortunately, not that many therapists in the home health avenue really have so much knowledge about head and neck, and certainly lymphedema for head and neck. Maybe sometimes they manage lymphedema for upper extremity, lower extremity, but for the head and neck, it's really hard to find that. And sometimes that's not what they look at, right? They're looking into, can you move from point A to point B? And if you can, it's really nothing else we can really do for you. So you just
Exactly.
neck. But in the meantime, you're having all this swelling. This is what was of your major concern when I saw you, was like, let's get rid of this swelling, because if you have swelling on the outside, there's still being an issue with swallowing,
Right.
just breathing, just in general, kind of really create all this. So we really try to encourage patients to, even though if they have home care, to still want to push into seeing us, right? So ask for an outpatient appointment either with us or wherever you are. If you have somebody who does, rehab in a cancer as a specialist in head and neck, and do that. And sometimes when I see patients who are getting home care, then I always tell them, well, you got to choose because you cannot have both, unfortunately, insurance. If you feel it's the nursing part that is important, but you can learn that and you can know how to change the dressing, and many times you can, they just drop it and then just continue with outpatient as soon as you can. So really make a difference in how you can get into radiation, just without having something else that is bombarding that neck and making that swelling to perhaps being worse. So.
And I would encourage too, something that you said just made me think, for anybody dealing with this, that to really check your insurance, because everyone assumed that we would not be able to do home health for nursing and outpatient therapies, and we could have.
Oh.
So I think it's different for every insurance, but for his, as it turns out, we could have. We didn't end up needing to do that, but they said absolutely, if it's two separate services, that we could have.
Great advice, because you're right. Everybody, you just taught me something. I have no idea that was an option. So that's great to know. So if tell me a little bit about what is what was the more valuable tips that you learned to your journey, GT?
When someone offers you help, take it. Be positive and pray.
Those are the three. And
those are
as a caregiver for you, Jennifer, what would be your 3 value tips?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's telling me patience, and yes, for sure. Like, I always thought I was a really patient person, but taking care of yourself, knowing when to walk away. It's hard. It was a heck of a lot more intensive than I think either one of us thought it was going to be. But definitely I would echo what he said, when people offer help, take it. And we have been so blessed all through our lives, really, and certainly in our marriage and raising a family, to just not have major medical things. Like, we're not people that have had to accept a lot of help. and you know, Durley, but I'll share with your listeners that we were also displaced from our home when all this was happening because of flooding from Hurricane Ian. And so this was one crazy year. It was just about a year ago this time that our house flooded. So we were already living with family, already learning how to accept help when we weren't used to accepting help. And then this happened in November and all spring and summer. We only just moved back home in June and then moved back to Gainesville a couple of weeks after that for radiation. So it's been a crazy year. So we were so lucky to have the support system that we had, but it was really tempting a lot of times just to shut people out and just not really want people asking us, how things were going. We didn't want to talk about it anymore. You get tired of playing the tape, as one of my friends said, like replaying the tape over and over again to everybody, but people do want to know, they do want to help. We did a Caring Bridge account, which was really helpful so that I could post in one place throughout everything and people could know what was going on. But yeah, as a caregiver specifically, taking care of myself, and that's still a struggle. It's still hard to kind of walk away and then prioritize. And, there were times there when I was the only person that knew how to take care of him, especially right after surgery and the suctioning and the things like that. And we had family who said, show us how to do it. You don't need to be the only one that knows how to do it. And so that was really important.
So you mentioned a couple of things, and one thing when you talk about you guys going through what you went through with the hurricane, and I remember you showing me the pictures, and what is always gonna be in my head when you guys are drinking beer in front of your or with your house, and I'm like, what a great attitude to see life, right? So what can you do, right? You sit down
Right.
and cry about it, or you
Yep.
freaking just enjoy life, because what else can we do? And that's gonna be right here on my forehead, or has been on my forehead since then. It's like, oh my God, what a way to see life, right?
Yes.
And the other point is, you mentioned something about the called Care Bridge. Would you wanna explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, Caring Bridge is a website. There's no cost to start your own page. They take donations, but it's a place where it's, I guess, kind of like a Facebook, type of thing, but you're inviting people. We didn't want to make it, now most people know because of his voice being gone and those kind of things. So it's definitely more public. But back when we were first going through, we were selective about who we wanted to share the information with. So Caring Bridge it's caringbridge.org, and it's a website where you just create your own page. You can upload photos, but you're sharing journal updates. The people that you have invited, I think you can have different settings. You can have it where people can search you out on Caring Bridge. We didn't. We wanted to invite people. So anyone that you have invited, they can see any update. They can comment on it. You can have kind of conversations on there with people, but it allowed everybody to stay up to date on what was happening without me having to constantly text people updates or send them updates, which was huge, because as much as people think they're doing the right thing and they really are coming at it from such a beautiful place of caring, the questions and the texts, when it's a long process like we were in, can be really overwhelming. So people were hugely respectful and just knew that updates were there, and would go there first before asking me how things were going.
Okay, that's great. That's very good value. Yeah, for people to know. What will be, JT, for you the most painful part of this journey? And I know it has to be tough, but if you say, what is one thing that really hit you?
I didn't believe it was as bad as it was.
Yeah, I don't know that, just to expand on his answer, I don't think you can know how intense this will be. I mean, his surgeon was Dr. DZ Zhigalewski at UF Health, and it's not for lack of transparency, because boy, they do. He's very, very blunt and frank, and I'll never forget the day sitting there and hearing him describe the surgery just like it was, things being very routine and something very normal that everybody listens to normally, and we walked out of there just literally in complete and total shock. So it's not that you don't know what's coming. I think you just can't even register just how intensive it will be, and the time in the hospital and the recovery just from the surgery alone. I mean, they rebuilt his throat. I mean, you alluded to that earlier. Like it's unbelievable what they do. And so, they're completely reconstructing his anatomy. And so just the recovery physically, and then you add on the radiation. And then of course, now I think, just the living with no voice and realizing that this is our new normal. So is that a fair summary of what you mean by we didn't really know how bad it was and how it was going to be, the longevity of it. Yeah, how it keeps going. Yeah, that's
But the other thing that you make me laugh every single day I work with you. That's like, even I don't think you have to see it as you don't have a voice, because I don't think your voice is never gonna go away. We just cannot hear it. Let's put it that way. Because right now in this podcast, which we're trying to figure out, oh my God, he throw like the most fun jokes, and like, again, and that's why I want you to be here in this podcast, because I don't think that's never gonna go away. It's just, I can totally read your lips right now, and that's what I did when you came here.
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying his whole life he's been like that. I mean, the sense of humor has always been there.
Yeah, and you have not used that even through these tougher times, So so that's, I don't think that that ever gonna go away. But again, that still teaches me, like, no matter what you guys going through, life move on, and you just need to make the best out of it, right? Like,
right.
Like you guys were here in Gainesville, staying in somebody's friend's house or something like that, right? And then it's like, what fun are you doing this weekend? Are we gonna be doing this? Are we gonna be doing that? If we're here in Gainesville, may as well let's just have fun. I mean, that's awesome, right? Versus are you just gonna see each other and then just feel sorry for yourself, right? No. It's like, let's see the best out of life and how can we really get this going. So that, like, again, it's one thing I love about seeing cancer patients is everything I learn from you guys every single day. So that's just really has been amazing. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
How about the most painful part for you as a caregiver?
Oh gosh.
I know he's your pain. That's the beginning.
Yeah. No, he's never a pain. No, never, ever, never, ever.
Look at his face.
Well, so on that note, I have to tell you how funny it was. So, communication is not super easy. It's much easier now because we've gotten so used to it. But in the early days, everything was so serious and so intense. And I was nervous and scared and afraid I was going to hurt him with the things I was doing. And just, I remember the first night home, laying awake, just listening to him breathe, because he's breathing through the stoma. He was breathing fine, but it's a different sound, so I can remember just laying awake the whole night long thinking, wow, this is crazy. So that was so intense. And then I'd be working so hard to understand him, and he would be repeating and writing things down, and it would end up being the corniest one-liner about something that we were dealing with in that moment. And I didn't know whether to scream or cry or be mad at him or laugh. Like I thought, oh my gosh, I'm working so hard here to understand everything you're saying. And he would be just giving me the worst dad joke ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but I definitely, as far as the most painful part, I would say it's hard to watch somebody that you love go through something like this. And finding the right balance of being supportive, but also pushing him. There were plenty of times, what people didn't see were the times when I know he was so angry at me because I wouldn't let up on something, or, just there were times that he was ready to be done, not completely, not in an over dramatic way, but just didn't want to deal with whatever it was at that moment that we were dealing with. And I had to be the one to make him deal with it. And that's really hard, because in my heart, I can't even imagine what he's dealing with. Like, I don't even know that I'd be able to handle it. and then I had to be that tough person, kind of cheering him on in a very firm way to keep going.
Yeah. Moving,
Yeah.
so one thing as well that I think part of his success in all this is how much involvement you have with him. So we have caregivers who are like, how many times they come in and they involve like you. I mean, you learn yourself manual lymphatic drainage from the beginning. You
Yes.
knew it, did it, it's like, and what else? And what else this can be happening? You're involved, you're informed, you look up stuff. It's not, you just know biting everything I'm saying in the beginning, right? It's like, really,
Right.
why are we doing this and why are we doing that, and all that is great, right? So, and then you were right there, we taught you did it with him 3 times a day, you push him into this wrapping that he hated so much in the beginning and he didn't want to do, and he's like this.
All night long, Durley. Are you proud? He wears his compression wrap all night long when it was
Awesome.
only like an hour and a half or 2 hours in the beginning.
And how many times he rolled his eyes at me every time I say we need to increase these hours, and I'm sure he's like, oh my God, what is she talking about? You have no idea what I'm going through. Stop. Like, he wanted to punch me, he just showed me a fist. So so I was like, but you were there to just really push him through that. And again, my expectation with him was he's only gonna get worse because he was already so swell with the time I saw him.
Yeah.
And now we're gonna be fighting against time because the skin is gonna become sensitive. I need to get him better faster so we can not get this radiation to really, and he did it, right? And then there was times I'm like, are you feeling better? No, not really. I felt,
Right.
I don't think this is working. You know how many times you had that? And then I have to prove to you by remeasuring you, like, look how much better this is shrinking down. And then you just see the little light, like, okay, he's not rolling the eyes anymore. He's actually see the value of doing what we ask you to do.
Yeah.
And then as you're going through radiation, again, you want to tell us a little bit about, what do you think was the harder part as you're going through radiation?
But he said the hardest part was the blistering, the skin
Mhm.
pain of that. Yeah. Specifically for radiation. Yeah, because again, it's not that people aren't telling you, because everybody was so helpful and telling us what to expect at UF Health, but you don't know it because you haven't lived it. And so people kept telling us that, the first few weeks would be good, and then it would get bad. And I can remember, those first 2 to 3 weeks, we kind of look at each other like, well, this isn't so bad. And oh man, that 6th week and then that first week home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was how many weeks? Yeah, after, right. Yeah, once we got home, I mean, that was intensive once we were home. And then of course, and again, everybody told us what to expect, but you don't have a frame of reference to really understand it if you've never gone through it. And people would, and I'm so thankful that people told us how difficult it would be, because we would have been terrified. Because it was already scary, even after everyone had told us everything, that week, that 2 weeks home, really, he cleared up actually pretty fast. He did very well. But about 7 days after we were home, I mean, it was so bad. And had we been home alone and not expected that, yeah, it
I'm
was.
so glad. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's something I keep reinforcing with patients, because in your mind, you're thinking, I'm done with radiation.
We rang the bell. We celebrated.
I was about to say, I ring the bell, I graduate, it's over. The chapter of my life is over. But
Yeah.
Unfortunately, radiation is an accumulation of toxicity in there. So that will continue creating this peeling and this, skin continue being damaged, and the fatigue and the fibrosis and the swelling and everything else. So I always reinforce the patients, and even I mentioned that to you, don't think you're done. The next 2 weeks are gonna be misery. Don't get scared, totally normal. You just do what you can do, right? So you can only do so much, because after a certain amount of weeks, you cannot really do yourself manual lymphatic drainage because the skin is so bad, but that doesn't mean that we cannot do other things to try to continue stimulating that system to help with that swelling. So But yes, you're right. I really try to reinforce, because patients are thinking, my brain will think I'm done with this treatment, I should feel better right away. But yeah, it's not. And at this point, you're what? You're about 2 months out?
Gosh, I haven't really even thought about it. It was July 27th, so yeah, we're
You're two
just
months out.
about
Yeah,
8
2
weeks.
months out.
Yeah,
Yep,
about 8
yeah,
weeks
2
out.
months out. So you're still having some residual issues at all with the skin, or no anymore? That's
No,
resolved.
no, the skin is good. It's so soft and new and nice.
And then one thing that we have a hard time with him was his hardness underneath, his chin. All that is better. Okay.
It is better. It's a constant. It's because we keep working it. And so we are going to, we did find a physical therapist locally. So we're seeing him once a week. Yeah, he's not the same as you at all. I wish people could hear him because he loves you so much. But yes,
I know.
JT says he is not the same as you, and he's not. But he's wonderful here locally in Daytona, and he is trained in lymphedema treatment. And so we go once a week to him, but we're still massaging once or twice a day. Because it's unfortunately it's all tied in, because the electrolarynx device needs a clear transmission of the vibration up into the mouth. So when you place it up against your neck, it needs to be able to vibrate up into the mouth. And then when he mouths the letters, that's what creates a voice, right? So if you're swollen, you don't have that clear path for the vibration to get up into the mouth. And so that, I know, gets really frustrating for him. When he wakes up in the morning and he's had the wrap on all night, and we massaged right before bed, right before he put the wrap on, it's so great because it's so soft. But I'll say probably within a few hours, there's just little pockets of hardness, and it unfortunately is right in that area where he would want to be putting that electrolarynx. So it is so much better. Like when I look at photos, it's crazy the difference, but it's still it's 2 months out. Still, yeah,
It's still early, like 2 months out of radiation. It's still not too long. So I think that things will resolve after inflammation continue coming down. I know we mentioned at one point about a lymph pump. Did you ever look into that?
We haven't, no. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess. So I guess JT is saying that the PT here, Charlie, has talked about it, but that the rep that we have locally, I guess, doesn't really recognize it for head and neck. So maybe that's a conversation for us to have after, Durley. So maybe
Talk
we
about
can,
that. It is
yes.
great value. It is only one company, Medical Tactile, who does a head and neck pump, lymphedema pump. So that's why if you don't have, if it's a right from another company, yes, no, because that's the only company.
That's exactly, yeah.
We can talk
Yep.
more about it. I think that can be a very good value for him.
I think it would be.
So we'll chat after that, but I think that will be really good. Okay, perfect. Is there anything that you have that will be a value for our audience? And if yes, will you share with us, GT?
Mhm.
Work hard. You are worth it.
Yeah. Just work hard that you're worth it. Yeah, this is a lot of work, but I think you have to just get up every day and know that you're willing to do the work. It's tough. It's a tough road.
I'm sure. And I'm sure has been sometimes, I think when we were talking back and forth, like communicating via email back and forth, like, how is he doing? And you were like, I think he was having a little bit rough of time, like, he really doesn't want to be doing this as often. And no, he was giving me all the talks over there, JT. So I'm still having a little somebody here. He's telling me everything about you. But I can totally imagine how, you just wake up and it's like, God, come back to reality, start all over again, before you used to just wake up and go. But again, I always want you to look back into how were you a month ago and where are you now? So it's the best thing to do is just really don't look who you were a year ago before the cancer. Look and see how I was last month, how I was 2 weeks ago versus now. how was yesterday before today, right? So sometimes you gotta see that progression that way, because if we look
Right.
who we used to be prior to it, it's like, I remember how I used to be before I have any kids, right? So like, okay, what happened, with myself, with kids versus no kids, right? So you start looking back, or like, my gray hair wasn't there, like, 5 years ago. So again, you start to look back into and take one day at a time and see what's the good thing today that didn't happen yesterday. And I think that may help to kind of
Yeah.
improve, your quality of life, and just kind of like have a better way to see life sometimes,
Yeah, I think so.
How about you, Jennifer? Is anything where you share with us? You mentioned something about a couple of Facebook groups.
Yes. Yeah. So JT is never one for support groups or Facebook groups or counseling or those I can't ever quite get him, despite how hard I might push sometimes to access those things. He just doesn't feel comfortable with it. I, on the other hand, do. So I immediately start to look for support in all the places that I can find it. And there is a Facebook group called Larry's Speakeasy. So someone who has had a laryngectomy, a shortened name for that person is a Larry, which I didn't know before going into all this. But so it is a support group on Facebook for people who have had a laryngectomy, their family, their friends. It's kind of open to anybody who's been impacted by a total laryngectomy. And that has been incredibly helpful. As a Facebook group, you have people who are just now going through it. You have people who had the surgery, 15, 20 years ago and are successfully living and happy, and have adjusted. You have people who have had relapses of things. So you have every imaginable angle. And then even getting like supplies and things like that. In the beginning, when we had a bit of a gap after his surgery for the filters that he needs to wear and the neck straps and all of those kind of things, there was a timing gap from when we were released from Shands. They sent us home with a great going home package, but we were running out. And so that Facebook group actually has a ton of supplies that people have donated over the years for various reasons. And so they sent us a huge box that got us through until we were able to get with the vendor for the supplies and get things on a monthly basis where we wouldn't run out. So, even practical things like that. But more than that, just having a place to go. There was one point where we were running out of supplies, and I just posted in the Facebook group and said, is there by any chance anyone in the Daytona Beach area? I mean, this is an international Facebook group, so I had no idea. And within 5 minutes, somebody popped up and said, yep, I'm in Daytona, come get what you need. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. So and I got to sit and speak with a woman, who was in JT's situation and was just really frank and honest with me and talked to me about how things were going. And then there is another Facebook group that I was referred to from that original one that is just for caregivers. And that has been incredible. They are not as open with the membership. You have to only be a caregiver. You can't be somebody who is a person who's had a laryngectomy, because they want it to be a free and open and honest space for people to be able to ask questions, to vent sometimes with people who understand what it's like, because nobody would understand it unless you're living it. So those two Facebook groups to me have been super, super helpful.
That's awesome. Would you mind to email those names, and I can put it in the description of the podcast so people can look into that? That's great. It's another group called, and I think I shared that with you guys, the Head and Neck Alliance. So they actually do have, and I know JT, you're not really on tune with that, but they do a lot of webinars and these patients. So you don't really have to talk to anybody. It's a webinar. So you just listen to it and you take whatever you want to take. But I've been listening to them, and they have a really good webinar. They're actually having a big kind of symposium coming up. I don't remember where, but this one is in person, but they do constantly webinars, a monthly, I think, and it's usually survivors. So usually, people who has been through, and that's, it's really great. Like I learn a lot, and I really enjoy listening to that because it just gives me some tips and some things I can help out by, advising, or, try to just talk to you guys, and see, like, I hear this, try this, see what happened, perhaps
Yeah.
can help. So that's another really good group.
You know what, Durley, I just thought of something too that I had forgotten that would be along those same lines. At UF Health in Dr. Deasy's office, they had a flyer up on the wall, so that you could go on this website and find a mentor, either as a caregiver or as someone who was going to be having the surgery. And I did access that. So I did have a mentor. She's up, I think she's in Pennsylvania. We never met in person, but we would text each other, and she would call and check in. I didn't access it a ton. I think I probably could have utilized it a little bit more, but she was wonderful. And she really just kind of met me where I was. She wasn't overbearing in any way. So we would text every once in a while. I have not even reached out to her probably in 6 weeks. And she actually just texted me yesterday and just said, hey, just checking in to see how things are. And that was, I think it's through Immerman's Angels is the group.
Wow. I didn't know about that either.
Yeah, so I'll send you that one too. But that was just a QR code on a flyer in Dr. Deasy's office that I scanned, and it took me to how to request a mentor. It was good. And again, it's people who have been through the exact same situation. So they know it like no one else does.
Okay, perfect. And then what will be, I know I asked about some certain books for JT and he wasn't really too much into that, but how about for you, Jennifer? What will be one book that you would recommend to the audience?
So also from that Facebook group that I was talking about, the Larry's Speakeasy group, there is actually a member of that group, and his name is Itzhak Brook, Dr. Brook. And he wrote, and I'll send this to you as well, it's the Laryngectomy Guide. And he has just from surgery to radiation to, stoma care, all of the different things that you have to deal with. He has just a really nicely laid out book that was really, really helpful. And he makes it available to people for free. If you want a hard copy, which we did, then you can purchase it, but you can download electronic versions for free. So I can send you that information as well. But it's super. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's a doctor who is not only a doctor, but is also a laryngectomy. So he is looking at it from the medical standpoint as well as the personal.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that info. How about, is any one question you wish I'll ask you and you have responded? JT, for you first.
You didn't ask me how much of a help both you and Jen were. A tremendous help.
For those who can't, he's toasting Durley right now.
Here you go. Yeah.
Yeah, he's toasting her.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And again, I think that the success of a lot of these treatments is based on what you put into it. And we can have a lot of patients who we show things and we prescribe exercises. We show you how to do a manual lymphatic drainage, how to wrap, how to do all those different things that we did. But if you leave us and you don't do any of it, then it's not going to be successful, right? So I think the success that we have as a therapist is based on where you put in as a patient and being compliant for what we're teaching you. Otherwise, we don't see that. So you guys being like amazing, and that's why I was like, oh, I wish you come to me all the time. And I know we're gonna keep in touch. I know when you come back into town to see Dr. DC, you better stop by to say hello. And then and thank you so much for doing this with me. How about you, Jen? Is anything that you wish I will asking you that you will be answering?
Gosh, I don't know. I kind of feel like we sort of covered everything I was thinking of. I feel like I have to give a shout out to UF Health. Honestly, what an amazing experience we had. It was like I said earlier, we are not people that have had, thankfully, a lot of medical situations. So this was new and novel, and not real pleasant in a lot of situations, but just the care that he received, from office visits to outpatient, you guys with therapy, it's one thing for him to have a sense of humor, but it wouldn't have really meant as much if people weren't receiving that sense of humor and dishing it right back out to him. Like it kept things real. But his initial care after surgery, those were some of the scariest days that I've ever had. And I think probably for him too. I don't know that any of us were prepared for him to be multiple pumps from all the different wounds and to all the suctioning and just all the things that were happening. And of course no voice and now a hole in his neck, right? So it's a lot to process, and the care that he received at UF Health and the nurses, Ashley Allen, I have to give a shout out specifically because she was unbelievable in intensive care. She, giving him his first shower, playing the music that she knew he loved on her phone in the bathroom to try to make it a calmer, nicer situation. It was incredible, and just the heart of the people. It was amazing to see. So I have to give those kudos to UF Health, because my goodness, what a network, and just the radiation team. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out. It was such a group effort to get us through what we went through, and it was just incredible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being you. Continue having that sense of humor. I'm looking into, this is just an audio podcast, but hopefully, get like a little video, because I love people to see, your faces, you're showing this, all those things. Again, it's like great.
I think I need to send you the photo of us sitting on our front porch after the flood, toasting with our beer. And since you mentioned it, I'll have to send you that photo as
I
well.
love that picture. That's something I was always gonna stick right here. So when I'm having a hard day, I will look at that picture and say, what do I complain about? Right.
Just gotta just suck it up and deal with it, right?
And that's one of that's one of the like the learning experience I have with patients with cancer is this, right? Like I really, don't sweat the smallest stuff, because sometimes you guys go through so much that, me having a little pain here and there is nothing. It's like, come on, people that I treat every day go through so much that really my life is just so easy. So, so it really kind of make me see life from a completely different perspective just through your eyes. So just because what I see every day. So again, thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank you.
for both of you in the distance, and keep it up. Keep me informed how everything continue with rehab, okay?
We will. Thank you, Darlie.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.